good morning from Brazil.
I hope I'm clearly audible, Anjali.
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah,
Good evening, everyone. We will commence our session in 2 minutes from now. I would request all the attendees and my fellow guest speakers on the panel today to kindly switch on your webcams, have a sip of water, and be prepared. Mr. Pawar, if you could just inform us once you are live. Your pleasure. Katrina, Srishti, Shahani, Deepak, Gurjot, and Shreya, please, if you could just switch on your webcams. Shreya Kashyap, Srishti Singh, Katrina Monteiro, and Deepak Kagawani. If you can just switch on your webcams, it would be a pleasure. Anjali, if you could just check with Miss Saad, maybe she's having a network issue. She's dropped out.
Sure.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Conference
yeah.
2.2 on emerging trends in commercial laws for studies. We are delighted to have you all join us once again as we continue our exploration of this fascinating topic in the second session of the conference.
Indeed, it's wonderful to see familiar faces and our new participants joining us today. We hope you had a restful evening and are ready to dive into another engaging session filled with valuable insights and discussions.
We have an exceptional lineup of speakers today who bring a wealth of knowledge and practical insights to the stage. Their expertise will shed light on the legal challenges and opportunities faced by startups in today's dynamic business landscape. So, without further delay, let's introduce our esteemed speakers for today's session.
Firstly, we have Dr. Jean Dal Bianco, the founder and president of the Brazilian Institute of Mediation and Arbitration. With his extensive expertise as a certified international arbitration and mediator, as well as a PhD in law and postdoctoral studies in international law, Dr. Dal Bianco is a leading authority in the field. He is also an accomplished writer, international speaker, and a professor at Trinity C University in the USA and Wisdom University in Nigeria.
Next, we have Professor Purnima Mishra, an academician and dedicated researcher, currently teaching courses in entrepreneurship and strategy at Prestige Institute of Global Management. Professor Mishra is also visiting faculty in the strategy and entrepreneurship area at IIM Sambalpur. With over 8 years of experience in academia, research, and administration, her research focuses on corporate governance, sustainability strategy, firm performance, and entrepreneurship. She has presented her work at numerous international national conferences, including the esteemed Academy of Management.
Our next speaker is Ms. Ismahani Saad, the Managing Partner and Head of the Corporate, Commercial and Projects Department of KT Educates. With more than 14 years of experience, she has provided valuable advice to local, regional, and international institutions in various areas such as oil and gas, project financing, infrastructure development, and mining. Asmani has received recognition for her exceptional work, including being named Managing Partner of the Year at the Africa Legal Awards. She serves in leadership positions and is actively involved in initiatives such as the Investment Advisory Committee, United Bank for Africa, and the East Africa Law Society Oil and Gas Committee.
Our next speaker is none other than Ms. Elena Sergeyevna Rashchenko from Russia, a mediator specializing in business and family relationships. With over 2 years of experience, Elena believes in the unlimited opportunities that mediation offers, particularly in the business. As a practicing lawyer, she has witnessed the transformative power of mediation in resolving conflicts and avoiding protracted litigation in multiple startups. Ms. Alina emphasizes the importance of facilitation and strategic sessions, creating growth points with care and calm.
Next, we have Mr. Bhumesh Verma, the Managing Partner of Corporation Communication Legal, an independent Indian law firm based in New Delhi. With a distinguished legal career and expertise in areas such as mergers and acquisitions, corporate and commercial contracts, and foreign investments, Mr. Verma is a sought-after professional in the legal industry. As a prolific writer and speaker, he has authored numerous articles, blogs, and books on commercial contracts drafting and mergers and acquisitions. Mr. Verma is also a guest professor at top law and management schools across India, where he imparts his knowledge and trains next generation in these subjects.
Final speaker for today is Mr. Ramashankar Tiwari, who is a distinguished lawyer in the Allahabad High Court with an impressive educational background in law, including a bachelor's degree from the University of Lucknow and a master's degree from the National Law Institute University in Bhopal. Mr. Tiwari has almost a decade of experience and specializes in constitutional law and socio-economic offenses. As a trusted legal advisor to public sector undertakings, corporations, and expats, Mr. Tiwari provides valuable services in commercial and civil matters. He is renowned for his expertise in mediation, litigation, and arbitration, presenting clients as their advocate. Mr. Tiwari's practice areas span corporate legal counseling, intellectual property rights, commercial and civil litigation, and arbitration. His extensive knowledge and strategic approach earned him a stellar reputation for successfully resolving complex legal challenges and achieving favorable outcomes.
We are grateful for the presence and eagerly anticipate their valuable insights and contributions to today's conference. We would also like to inform all of you that the HR team is conducting polls in the chat box throughout the session. We encourage active participation from all attendees. Please take advantage of this opportunity to engage with the speakers, ask questions, and share your own experiences and perspectives. Once again, we thank you all for joining us today. Let's begin the conversation. Let's welcome our first speaker of the day, Dr. Jean Dal Bianco. I would request him to please commence his speech. Mr. Bianco, if you could just unmute yourself. We're unable to hear you. If you could just unmute yourself. Sure. We're still unable to hear you. I think you haven't unmuted yourself.
The leftmost option on your lower part of your screen represents the mic menu. Just click on it and it will be.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm sorry because of my phone was. I would like to share here slides. Um, Let me see. How can I share it here? Because I'm not very used to this one. Let me see.
The fourth option from your left or right presents a menu with rectangle, and an arrow in the
No,
middle.
I'm sorry, cannot hear you very well. I'm trying to share here my slides, and here there is a part here where I share the slide, but I cannot
The
share.
fifth option from your left
I don't
or
know
your
how to
right
share
side.
here. One moment. Well, um, let me see what I can do here now. Okay, I have a problem with my slides to share. God. Sometimes I'm confused with this Google Meet. I prefer some platform, but let's see how can I share share
You can
like
even
this.
continue with a simple speech,
No,
even that.
I'm trying now to share. No, look, I'm not being able to share my slide because, as a matter of fact, I don't know how to. But no problem for me. We're going to start our presentation. First, like greeting, Mr. Sharvan. I think the pronunciation. Thank you very much for the invitation. Very happy being here with you all. And I'd like to tell that congratulate for the event for the this to create this event is very important for all of us today. And thank you all for being here with us. What I'm going to talk to you today is a very important uh, subject, and I believe is the arbitration clause in startup contracts. And I'm going to tell you in brief words how to mitigating legal risks and protecting business interests. This is very important for us in our days. And I'd like to start with a quote that I used to say: arbitration clause in startup contracts unlock efficient resolutions, protecting secrets, and empowering growth. Because I believe that all startups need the three ingredients, three elements: efficient resolution, protecting secrets, and keep and empower the growth of the startup. I believe that's very, very, very important for all. And yesterday, a colleague of ours here talked about arbitration. What's better for me today to speak about this clause? Because the first question is why? Why arbitration? Is the arbitration important for startups? Why is it important? We have to understand that if you are looking for a faster and more cost effective way to resolve the dispute without the time consuming and expensive processes, litigation, as a matter of fact, in the arbitration is the best way. And these in this presentation today, I'm gonna guide you to a path of success in your business when you include this arbitration clause in your contract. Because remember, you all know that a contract, it is a law made between parties. It's a law. And when you're talking about arbitration, we are telling that it's a law where all my desires, all I want, will be in that contract. Of course, without interfere in the supremacy of the country, without interfering in the custom and the public order. But it's a law. Law. We have to be care about it, and we have to be care of what to protecting to protect our our business. It's most important to protect our business. Okay, and sorry, I had a my God. I test everything, and now I. But okay, can you see me? Can you hear me? Okay, can you hear
Yeah, we
me?
can see and hear you.
Sorry. Oh my God, that's okay. And and I'm going to give you three reasons why we keep, we should maintain our the contracts, the clause in our contract. Why should we have to do this? Because it's simple. It's simple. There are three reasons. First reason, because we as a lawyer, we are trained to litigate. We are not trained to pacify. But you can tell me, Giancarlo, arbitration does not pacify. It's wrong. Arbitration give you the power as the part to say how you want all the process going ahead. For example, say why is arbitration important for startups? Firstly, first point, by including arbitration clause in your startup contracts, you can expedite the resolution of disputes. The resolution of dispute can be very quickly for you. The most significant point for me, because in the court we pass long years waiting for the decision, waiting for the decision of a judge. We are under his sometimes his desire, and how many decision was not according to what you expected for. Second, when we include the arbitration clause in your startup contract, the arbitration offers a streamlined process with shorter timelines compared in comparison to the court. Oh no, but arbitration is much more expensive. Again, it's a myth. It's a myth. It's a myth. It's not. Arbitration not higher. It's not more. More is much expect. No, it's not a myth. Depends on the chamber. Depends on the number of the tribunal. Depends on the number of the arbitrators, and depends on the complexity of the problem, the question, the case. So it's very wrong to say arbitration is very much more expensive. It's wrong. It's a myth. It's not. It's not. Because as a lawyer, we receive it per hour. And remember, every moment, every proceeding, you have to pay. I have been arbitrated for more than 30 years. I am the president of a chamber, and I can prove because I really act as an arbitrator every day in my life. I'm not act as a lawyer anymore, only as arbitrator, negotiator, and a mediator. And 30, the arbitration allows you to save valuable time and resources, enabling your startup to focus on its core business activity and maintaining the momentum. It's very important in a competitive market. And what's the most important in a startup? In a startup, in the day, the routine of a startup, the most important, in my opinion, is to protect the sensitive business information. This is the most important. We have to protect our sensitive uh, uh, information. We have many information. We are afraid of our employers. We're afraid sometimes of our colleagues, and we have to take care about it. And uh, the most important when you insert when you include this arbitration clause is because with arbitration clause you can ensure the confidentiality. Wow, yes, confidentiality of your startup's sensitive information during all dispute resolution. Unlike, unlike court proceedings, you do know about that, which are generally open to the public. Arbitration proceedings are private and confidential. How? You decide. You, the part. And the party, I decide it's gonna be confidential and the private. You know the power of the arbitration? That's the power of arbitration. You have a control, all the control of the process. That's the magic of arbitration, I say. When I train my arbitrators, I tell them, tell the people, tell your client the magic of the arbitration because you are responsible for every step. This is one. And when I talk about that, this means that your trade secrets, property, and all information and other confidential business matters can be safeguarded, preventing any potential damage to your reputation and or your competitive advantage. The reputation of your company will be safe. And other thing that's very important this area in this moment is the industry expertise. The arbitrator has the knowledge, the advantage by incorporating arbitration clause in your contract. You can choose arbitrator. Can you imagine it? I want this arbitrator differently from the court. No, he is your judge. No, I choose this one. Arbitration, the nature of arbitration, it is that's a contractual. Arbitration is contractual. You contract an arbitrator. That's the best part to talk to your client about this. And also, when the arbitrator has the knowledge, it's a fair and knowledgeable assessment he has. You possess expertise. You have a person that really knows about arbitration. You're responsible to choose. Who's responsible? You are responsible. And it allows for a fair and knowledgeable assessment of the dispute. And it's important to remember arbitrators with relevant experience. But Juan Carlos, I'm beginning now as an arbitrator. Remember, experience doesn't is there's you cannot compare experience with the time you work on arbitrations differently. There's nothing experience in you work, when you study, and you make the right things. That's the most important. And if you know, when you choose the arbitrator, in this case, I choose the arbitrator with the relevant experience, can better understand the problems, the details of the problem of the startups, unique challenge, and provide a well-informed decision. When you have, if you are arbitrator, I believe that we have some arbitrator here, tells your client, speak to your client, the magic and the power of the arbitration. That's 10 times better. As a lawyer, I always said to my client, remember, if you want to take a time consumer, we spend 4, 5, 10 years, we can go to the court. However, I'm going to tell you the best way to resolve your problem, but you decide. Because a liar is my point. The lawyer cannot decide in the place of the client. My 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 thought, my thought about being a arbitrator and a lawyer. That's my point. And by ensuring that your dispute are heard by industry expert. Imagine you are talking to a person that really knows about that problem, that really has been studying about to solve it, to resolve, or to manage that problem. It's easier to reach an agreement. Remember, the spirit of the arbitration is not to litigate, is not to write a word. No, is to try to reach an deal, an agreement. This is the spirit of the arbitration. That's why I tell you, include the arbitration clause in your startups contracts of your clients too. Tell them the truth and tell them also the myth about arbitration. And here I'm telling the summary of the benefits of the arbitration clause in a startup contract. First, as I told you before, faster and more cost-effective resolution of dispute. As arbitrator, you have to make all the effort to reach, to try to let the part reach an agreement, a deal, much better than a word of condemnation. Second, confidentiality and protection of sensitive business information. It's great. For me, it's one of the best. Third, access to industry experts for fair and knowledgeable assessments. Fourth, focus. Focus on core business activities and maintaining your momentum because this is the market like this. You are working very well in the market, but if you just stop a while or if you have any of your sensitive information spread, your situation will be a little bit difficult. And the fifth thing, safeguarding reputation and competitive advantage. I believe you all know that when our information, internal information, is open to the public, it's get a little bit difficult because people try to copy, about the intellectual properties and so on and so on. This is the most important thing. And and for my final consideration, also a very short time that you have talked about it. My final consideration is that incorporating arbitration clause in startups country. I spoke about benefits. I'm gonna
Thank you,
guide you
Professor Bianco. I would really
to help
appreciate if you
you
can
as a
conclude
young
this.
arbitrator, young lawyers, young entrepreneurs, business man and woman. When you use the arbitration clause in the contracts of startups for your client of yours, you incorporate arbitration clauses. It offers significant advantages. First point. Second, it provides a faster, cost effective, and streamlined process for dispute resolution. Thirdly, the most magic for me, confidentiality. Confidentiality ensures the protection of sensitive business information. Confidentiality, private. The fourth, industry experts provide fair and knowledgeable assessment. And the fifth, consider the benefits of arbitration clause in safeguarding your startups from all interests of your startup and promoting uh, an environment for sustainable growth. Remember, when you are going to talk to your client, why? Oh, please, let's include arbitration clause in our contract. Tell your lawyer, tell your client why. Tell him, tell her, tell them the magic of arbitration. Thank you very much. I have finished my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you. I'm very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dal Bianco, for delivering such an enlightening speech on arbitration. Your expertise and knowledge has provided us with a deeper understanding on this subject matter. We
Happy to hear
appreciate
you.
your valuable contributions. Please to share your email address in the chat box for any queries attendees might have. And if any of the attendees have queries, you may please reach out to Dr. Bianco, whose email address we'll be providing in the chat box. Now, moving ahead, I would like to request Professor Purnima Mishra from IIM Sambal to commence his
Thank
speech.
you. Thank you. I'm sorry because I can't hear very well because I have a problem here, but thank you so much to you all. God bless you. Bye bye.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, Shravan, for your invite and opportunity to be the part of this conference. I'm really excited about it. And so, good evening, distinguished speakers, colleagues, aspiring entrepreneurs and scholars. So, I'm really today I'm honored to be a part of this conference, and here I would going to speak on a topic. So, I'll take just a second to share my slide. Let me know if it is working. Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
So, yeah, so today I'll be speaking on the topic evolving legal landscape for startup funding. Right. So, but before going into this, I would like to emphasize on the definition or the technical definition of the startup given by Department for Promotion of Industry and International Trade. Why I'm emphasizing on this definition, because it holds significance when it is about the eligibility criteria of various government funding or benefits or the schemes under Startup India program. So that's why it is important for us to review this definition, to understand this definition, being an entrepreneur or a scholar in this field. Right. So now here I would like to raise a question: why funding is required by startup? Yes, startups, they need funding. They need funding to develop their business model, to scale up their business. So they may use funding for creating prototype, for developing product, hiring team, or maybe managing other expenses like R&D expenditure, marketing, sales, or admin expenses, and so on. So as we all understand, that finance is a blood for any organization. So yes, startup, they need financial capital to develop their business. But the next question arises here, that how they are going to get funding. So for that, if you see, there are various sources available in entrepreneurial ecosystem. So like they can raise fund through individual, like we have angel investors. They can also get funding from organizations like venture capitalists, private equity, or maybe the government institutions, like in the form of grant, loan, subsidies. So there are various sources available for a startup to raise fund. And next, when it comes to the mode of funding, so like how investors, they are going to invest with this startup. So there are different modes available. So like they can invest as a form of equity participation, or maybe the debt financing, or maybe the combination of both, that we know as a hybrid instrument, or it can be also in the form of government, so grant and subsidies. So these are the different mode by which investors, they can invest with any startup. And the next, I would like to talk about the different sources of fund and how it is connected with the stages of operation of startups. Right. So why I'm talking about this stage and source connection, because startup funding requirement mostly depends on at which stage the startup is working currently. So like if your startup is working at the ideation stage, so maybe you can look for having bootstrapping, or maybe investing your own money, or maybe taking money from your friends, family, or your known ones. On the other side, if you are developing your prototype, you're working on your product, so maybe you can raise seed funding from incubators, accelerators, or angel investors. So likewise, if you are looking for scaling up your business, so maybe venture capital fund or the private equity fund can help you. So that's why it is important for us to understand what sources could be helpful at what stage of your operation. So that's why if I give you the brief about funding, we should understand from where we can use, or for where we can raise fund, why do we need fund, and then on what mode we are going to have investment, so like equity, debt, or other mode, or maybe and how it is connected with the stage at which we are operating currently. So building on all these, the background for the funding. Next, I would like to talk about some legal aspect related to the startup funding in India. So my presentation will be focusing on the regulation framework right now exists in India only. There are alternative investment fund. So for that we have semi alternative fund regulation, which introduced in 2012 by SEBI. So recently they have also modified this regulation in 2021. So it talks about basically three categories of alternative investment fund. So like category one is like infrastructure fund or capital venture fund or angel fund. The category two consists of like private equity fund, debt fund of funds, whereas the category three, which is quite risky, like hedge fund, PIP fund. So if you talk about the regulation requirement, of course, the category one is relatively lighter in terms of regulatory requirements as compared to category two and category three. So most of the fund available for a startup either belong to category one or to category two. So like if I further emphasize on fund of funds, so this is a very special fund available to startup. So let me give you one example. So the government recently has introduced one fund of funds for startup, which is currently operated by SIDBI. So what they do not directly invest with the startup. So first they provide this fund to registered venture capitalists, and then those venture capitalists they decide with on startup in which they are going to invest. So if I talk about the current funding status in India, so more than 750 startups they have already funded by alternative investment fund in the form of angel investor fund or the venture capital fund, and more than 95 startups they have been supported by fund of funds of startup program under DPIIT. So this is the one way you can raise your fund. The second way by which you can raise your fund is through external commercial borrowings. So recently, RBI permitted a startup to raise external commercial borrowing. So these borrowings or these loans are basically from the foreign lenders, right? So with the help of authorized dealer category one banks, so banks like SBI or maybe the HDFC or the Axis. So they will help you if you want to raise this borrowings. But yes, there are certain conditions like you have to comply with the definition provided. So in the very first slide, I mentioned one definition. So you should be defined as a startup by that criteria. Then you should comply with the FEMA regulation in India, and then you cannot use that funding for any purpose. So that need specific purpose which is related to your business. So you cannot use that money for real estate investments or state or stock market speculations. So like these activities, and there's again a cap for that for financial year and maturity period, and you have to comply with certain reporting and disclosure requirement if you raise fund through external commercial borrowings. So there are 2 3 ways by which you can raise fund in India. And just building on that, the next I would like to talk about certain benefits or advantages available for startup under Startup India Initiative Program. So the benefit like angel tax exemption. So here earlier startups were paying that tax, but now they are exempt. They're exempt by paying angel tax. So angel tax is actually you pay on the excess premium paid by investors over the fair market value of your shares. But again, there's a limit. I mean, this exemption is only up to the 25 crore rupees fund by angel investors. Beyond that, you have to pay that tax. And the next benefit which is available under this program is a tax holiday. So it's again the benefit like startups are exempt from paying income tax for 3 consecutive assessment years out of their 10 years of operation. So this is another benefit available for startup at the early stage. And the next exemption I see, which is a capital gain tax. So we pay capital gain tax when we sell some long-term assets and we realize some profit out of that. But here, startups, if they do some selling of long-term assets, like most of the time immovable assets plant, machinery, or the property. But again, that capital gain has to be invested or reinvested in eligible new assets specified by this act, and there is a time framework for that. So all these points we should consider. And the next exemption, it is not directly for the startup. This exemption is for the incubators. So incubators, if they invest in any startup, if they realize some capital gain, so they are not supposed to pay capital gain tax or other benefits. So this is, so all these benefits or incentives, we can see that this is just to promote and support funding entrepreneurial ecosystem in India. And if I talk about other ways how this startup India initiative is promoting entrepreneurial ecosystem, is like you can apply for collateral free loans. Earlier it was very difficult for a startup to get collateral free loans, but now they can apply under this program. And there will be also incubation support, where you can get support in your marketing, networking, you get mentoring. So all these support is also available. Then there's a very useful online resource available, named as Startup India Learning Program, from where you get useful resources how you can raise your fund for the startup. And then there are other, like you will get networking with investors. You can also showcase your business model, business idea to investors or industry experts or the mentors. So these are the funding supports available under Startup India initiative. And as we are talking about the funding, so of course we may expect a lot of documentation is required for that. So I mean, here I would like to just briefly talk about what kind of the documentation required for if you're thinking to raise your fund. So like first is a pitch deck. Of course, you need to prepare a small presentation that provides an overview of your business model, your business idea, your business strategy, and how you're going to scale your business, so that you can pitch that idea to your investors. And the second, which is required by law, is a term sheet. So term sheet is actually a non-binding agreement, which specifies the key terms and conditions related to that investment for in case of startup. And then other reports like due diligence reports, so a comprehensive due diligence report you are required to submit before getting funding to your investors. Sometimes investors, they also do this due diligence at their end, and they might be third party responsible for that. And of course there are certain agreements or the contracts like shareholder subscription agreement, shareholder agreement, so like which talks about the right obligation of shareholders, number of shares you are going to issue, their price, and the mode of funding. So then valuation report, and ultimately share certificates. So these are the documentation you should prepare if you are looking for the funding for your business. So with this thought, I would like to pause here, and if you have any comment or any question, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mishra, for the enlightening speech. We're grateful for the valuable insights you've shared with us today. Please share your email address in the chat box. If anyone in the audience has any questions or needs further information, please don't hesitate to reach out to Ms. Mishra.
Sure,
Now,
sure.
I would like to...
I had a small question for you, Ms. Mishra. Since you have spoken on the regulatory affairs with investment laws, especially for now, don't you feel that taking more private investors or venture capitalists into startups makes entrepreneur more of a puppet?
Sorry, could you, sir, repeat your question? I didn't get in full.
My question was, what is your perception on the point that taking more private investors or venture capitalists into startups during the growth or any stage of blooming would obviously make the founder a puppet?
Yeah, so here my say is that as an entrepreneur, because if first time you're working for your venture, you have to be very cautious before raising fund from external parties, because of course they are going to invest your company, they are going to have equity participation, they are going to be the owner of your company, and equally they will be having the voting power. So sometimes venture capitalists, they have short term objective, where as an entrepreneur you may have long term orientation for your firm, and that's why conflict may happen. So maybe before looking for that funding, you should be very cautious about, how venture capitalists are going to help you. So I hope I answered your question.
Though I believe that there could be a possibility for startups to even emerge without, again, that's a part of the process. Anjali, you may continue.
Yes, now I would like to invite Miss Saad to commence her speech.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear and see
You
you.
can hear me?
Yeah, clearly.
Okay, great. All right. Good evening. Actually, it's about 5:30, almost 6 in Uganda. So good evening from Uganda. My name is Asmahani Saad. I've been introduced. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share with entrepreneurs and young businesses and startups. So I'll just briefly talk about the emerging trends in commercial law practice, especially for startups, what you need to at least be aware of as you set up your companies, just to understand the the commerce of things and how your business can interconnect with the environment, the legal environment. I will, sorry, Lex, I don't know, is it, someone has his hand up? There's a hand up by, I think, Lex.
Uh, I think
Did you
it's
have
an
a specific question? Sorry?
No, you may continue.
Okay, your hand is up. I thought, okay, so I can maybe take questions after, if there are any. Okay, so just to start us off, of course, our understanding of a startup is, you're just setting up your business. The first speaker talked a bit about governance. But ideally, as you set up your company, that should be one of the things that you think about. The short, mid, and long term, how do you intend to govern your company? How do you intend to sustain your business and have the right structures? Pamina talked about funding. Any funder for a startup, if you were to go for funding, they would not want to invest or even take a bet on you, whether it's debt or equity, if you do not have good structures or an indication of good structures, governing structures in place. So this is one of the things that any startup should think about right from the beginning. How do you want to govern your company? So from any business structure, you have your shareholders who are really the investors in the business. Then, sometimes being a startup, you find that as a shareholder, you're also the director of the company. Sometimes you're also the employee. You're working because this is a startup. So you find that you're applying yourselves to all these different organs, ideally in the company, but which is okay for a startup because you're setting up a business. But for the mid or long term, you should have clear structures of how do you intend to diversify in terms of governance. So you need to clearly show, your intentionality on having people like directors, setting up a board of directors, setting up a management team, and trying to clearly delink these structures, these organization structures, so that your business can have all these governance components around it: transparency, controls, direction. So you avoid the shareholder being the one person running the business, because then there are no checks and balances and things like that. So for any startup, I would advise that, yes, as you start the journey, you can do all these things, but you need to have that plan in place. And also what I usually advise startups back here home, because I work with a lot of startups, is that you need to look at the long-term goal of your company, not to also kind of scale up. And sometimes scaling up might mean that you call on other investors, you call on shareholders, you call on people, whether it's through funding or just eventually listing your company, to come in and walk this journey with you. So when you're structuring your company, even with shareholding, you don't need to allocate all the 100% shares to yourself or to your friend or whoever you are that you've started your business with. You need to think long term. So it is okay to start up your company, take up some shares, but have that mindset in that kind of mind that you can leave maybe about 40% shares or even up to 50% shares unallotted, knowing that at a certain point in time, you will use these shares for investment. You will sell these shares. You call on people, or you can call on venture capital funds to come and take up some equity in your company and put in money so they can enable you to scale up. Some companies eventually, for the long term, they want to go public. But if you allot and allocate all the shares to yourselves, and most times you find that even shareholders may not be able to capitalize immediately. So you run this journey 3-5 years down the road, you run out of capital, you don't have any other way of raising capital, everyone has shares, they might not be willing to, or even don't have the funds to capitalize. And so this is one of the things that I would advise startups. The other thing, of course, as an emerging trade, globally, we are aware of the ESG, which is the environment, social governance. This is something from the onset that you need to think about. Globally, the world is now very aware about how businesses interact with environment issues, social impact. There are components of business and human rights. How sustainable are your businesses? How sustainable are you going to run? What kind of business are you running? Are you working around issues of climate change? Are you working around issues of greening up and reducing carbon emissions? So also, depending on the kind of business that you are doing, you need to think through these things and also be aware that as you scale up, the issue here is, but knowing that your business is not going to just end with you. You need to sustain it. You need to scale up. You also need to make it attractive, either to the customers that you're serving or even other people, so they can come and invest in. So there's a lot of issues around ESG, environment, social impact of the business and how you're governing it. The issues around gender diversity. Do you have equal gender representation from your board members to the management and the whole employment? What kind of business are you running? Is it environmentally friendly? Are you emitting carbon into the environment? And so on and so forth. So these are kind of questions that as a startup you need to interrogate and investigate now and put it into your policies. You have a policy around climate change, you have a policy around environmental protection, social impact. Before ESG really became a global issue, we used to call it corporate social responsibility. How responsible is your business? Are you adding value to your community? Are you taking up some initiatives to see that it's not only just about profit, but even as you profit, you are giving back to your community? You're doing projects, whether with health, youth. How are you impacting? These days technology is such a big trend. So any startup, in terms of commercial law and how you're commercializing your business, these are some of the things that can really go far if you start having these conversations and preparing for them now. The other issue, of course, is data protection, privacy and data protection, cybersecurity. There are laws that are now in place, as a startup, depending on the business you're going into. If you're going to be a data collector, maybe it's a fintech or it's there are so many modes now these days people collect data. In Uganda, we have a very, very robust data protection law. So as you're setting up your business, are you aware of these interactions, as you're collecting people's data? If it's, for example, an online business, these days when it's online, you have to register, you're collecting people's data, email addresses, they're signing in. But as a business, this has an impact on your business as well. And then you have to protect data. You have to ensure there's privacy around this data. You have to build your businesses and make sure that cyber security is really, really paramount. That you're building systems that are not prone to attacks, because these days big data. If you know about big data, data is now the new mine. It's the new oil and gas. It's the new thing. So as you work in your business efficiencies, how well are you protecting people's data? How well are you protecting, even internally, employee data, customer data, and all these things? So as a startup, these are now the laws that are really, really setting trend around the commercialization of your businesses. Then you need to also think about things like I hinted on climate change, the green economy. The UN now and World Bank, all these financial, the IFC, which is the International Finance Corporation, they are promoting what we now know as the green economy. So even as you undertake your business, you're setting up your business, are you aware that, there are initiatives, there's credit, export credit and export facilities around promoting green economy, financing, and these days there are questions that are being asked about the responsiveness of the business as you set your trend. So this is also important. So it has to be very, very strategic, but you also have to know that your business is not just being set up, for example, for Uganda or for India or whatever jurisdiction you're in. You have to set up businesses knowing that we now live in a globalized world. We now have borderless businesses. You're here today, you're transacting all over the world. So that mindset has to quickly be the kind of mindset that an entrepreneur now carries, to know that my business is not just for me, it's not just for my family, but there is a global aspect to it. And so everything around business trends, around commerce globally, eventually has to affect your business. So you need to prepare. Something I always tell entrepreneurs, you need to understand and care what is happening in the macro economy of your jurisdiction. For example, in Uganda right now, our national budget was communicated to us about a day or 2 days ago. A lot is being done in terms of macro, aspects of it. The physical policies that are being put in place, how government is going to spend, what are the priority areas, taxes, how does this affect you? I find that most times entrepreneurs do not even want to, engage or even try to understand. It's the government, it's not my issue, I will do my business. But you need to know that these things matter, especially when it comes to taxes. When the country in India, I don't know when your national budgets are read, or your financial planning years are run. I mean the country's budgets. But when these things are presented, you have to know that when the country is going to spend, taxation is being paid by you, the business. Most times there would be targeted taxation on how government is going to raise money. You need to also know sometimes the initiatives or incentives that will be put in place to support startups or businesses, to promote money getting into the economy. So if you do not take time to understand and be part of this process, then most times you find that, you're just unaware. Either you're missing, or you're walking a journey that at one point in time you will be caught up by these issues. So I really advise startups, entrepreneurs to really, really be very, very intentional to understand what is happening around, their businesses, what is happening, government, what policies are being put in place, what trends are happening, what do they need to prepare for, what are government priority areas of spending. For us, for example, in Uganda, we are part of East African community. And with East African community comes with common markets, trade, and aspects like this. Are you going to build your business and prepare it to trade within the community? There are 7 countries. In Africa, we now have the Africa Continental Free Trade, where, businesses can move freely, within the continent of Africa. You can move your services, you can move people. So as you set up your businesses, are these things, are you minding and really planning through these things? Because eventually they will either make your business or prepare you to scale up. The other aspect I'll talk about is in the commercial laws and the commercialization of your business is intellectual property. As you set up your business, you need to understand that intellectual property, things like just your business mark, your trademark for your business. Most times, you set up your business, you run to do your logo, you have a beautiful logo, it's there, and then your business grows. And then someone out there immediately starts trading like you, and you don't have any protection, and it's confusing to the consumers, you're losing money, and maybe perhaps the other business is much more aware, and they quickly run and register it as their trademark. So you lose your business identity. So right from the start, think through these things. If you're doing your logos, if you have your mark, you identify as a business, please register it. Go register your trademark. Any unique intellects that you're applying to your business, even if it could be software, it could be, some unique things that you're doing for your business. Interact with your regulatory bodies to see, how do I protect this? Can I get copyrights over certain things that I'm doing? Some things can even go into patenting, So how best can you harness your intellect, that the ideas, the creativity that you're putting into your business as a startup, to see that it's also part of the assets of your business, it's part of the sustainability of your business, and it's how you will brand your business, whether it's within your jurisdiction or if you plan to scale up and get out of your jurisdiction. The other issue, of course, we cannot talk about commercialization or commercial law for startups now, and we don't think about technology. You have blockchain technology coming up. You have artificial intelligence. Right now, the whole world, we are talking about ChatGPT and everything that it's doing, So as you set up your business, what are those enablers? Tech is becoming, we can no longer hide from it. I don't know how the other jurisdictions are interacting with technology, but in Uganda, we have a lot of advancements in technology. Financial services, and there's technology. Health, there is health tech. There is financial tech. There is education tech. There is almost tech being applied everywhere. So as you're starting up your business, do you need to go the traditional way, or are you going to apply tech? But with tech also comes a lot of, yes, it's an enabler, but also there are also issues around tech. The kind of contracts you will, enter into to use tech enabling software contracts, all these things, licensing, royalties that you're paying. Sometimes you're taking up a tech, option, and you find that you're not even sure who created this software, and so you apply to your business. 2-3 years later, you have a lawsuit, you're infringing on our software, you're infringing on. So these things, because we are living in a world where technology is alive, it's part of us. Artificial intelligence, there's a lot of trade happening in the internet. There's the Internet of Things, Amazon, all these things that are up. You have now things like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter being used as marketeers for businesses, promoters of businesses. How are you prepared to interact with all these things using tech? I don't know how much time I have, but I don't want to take so much time. Lastly, the doctor really spoke about this, which is disputes. Sometimes, when we're starting up, maybe you're 2 or 3 people, it is rosy. You do not think that you will ever get into disputes. And so as you're starting up, maybe as shareholders or, business idea people, it's all rosy, but disputes are healthy. Yes, at one point in time you will dispute. It could be a financial dispute. It could be any kind of dispute, So with But it starts right from the startup, the entrepreneurs. How well are you ready to embrace dispute? How ready have you prepared yourself to have discussions around disputes from the word go? And so once you are open about understanding that at one point in time, yes, we could have issues, we could have disputes. Are we going to wait for them to come and eat at us, or are we going to prepare? So even as you do your shareholders agreements, you need to embrace things like ADR, alternative dispute resolutions. So you provide for mechanisms like mediations, like arbitrations, to avoid going into the traditional court system, which will eat up your business, eat up your time, eat up your money, and you waste so much of your efficiencies, yet you'll be applying them into the business. So, and then coming out of you as the entrepreneurs through your shareholders agreements, how do you then push it down to the rest of the company, the kind of contracts you have, how you're engaging with your employees? So the point here is that when it comes to the health of the business, commercializing the business, embrace that conflict will happen. So you need to think about healthier ways of resolving conflicts, avoidance if possible, mitigation if possible. But if it happens, let us embrace it. Let us have mechanisms that we can sit on the table and mediate, or arbitrate, keep our things private. Some businesses have gone down because they have gone to court, put everything, because court is public record, and even after you resolve it, then you're like, okay, now let's go for financing, and everyone is looking at your business. They're like, but we are reading so much dirty linen here. How can no one wants to touch your business? But if you had options like arbitration, which is really, really private and confidential, things end there and you move on with your businesses. Then lastly, of course, things that we need to think about like competition laws, antitrust laws, this is picking up. I don't know how it is in other jurisdictions, but in Uganda, things around consumer protection, competition, antitrust, just trying to control the markets. This is something you have to be aware of. In some jurisdiction, it goes far into things like anti-bribery laws, protecting corruption, you're making sure your businesses are honest, they are integral, So you have, when you're interacting with other businesses, they have you fill these forms on anti-bribery policies. They ask you for policies around anti-bribery, antitrust laws. How well are you competing into the market? Are you aware of the market forces of demand and supply, and how they're playing around the laws that are controlling that, if they're there? If they're not there, then how do you protect yourself around the risks that come with working with an economy where there's no protection for the consumers, there's no protection for competition, there's no protection for trust, and so on and so forth. So these are things that as startups we need to embrace. Of course, finally, and I hope this is lastly, risks. We need to really, 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 really look at the risks around the business. We need to look at the risks around the business. And as we look at risks, I always tell people, risk is fine if you try to understand it, okay? There's a saying that the higher the risk, the higher the return. So you could have that kind of business where your appetite for risk is very high because you want to have high returns, but also learn to make calculated risks if possible. Discuss and understand the risks that you want to take, the risks that you cannot take, and then just build a system around your business that can help you support a very, very good way in which you can scale up and eventually sustain your business for the long term. I will end here, and I'll hand over back to the CEO. Thank you.
Thank you, firstly, Ms. Saab, for sharing your expertise research. You have obviously touched upon multiple emerging trends in obviously multiple areas such as AI, big data, and others. Your speech has been both informative and actually thought-provoking. We appreciate the valuable insight you have provided. Please do share your email address in the chat box. If anyone in our audience would like to connect with Ms. Saad or has any questions, please feel free to reach out to her through her email address. And now, I would like to request Mr. Tiwari to commence his speech. Mr. Ramashankar Tiwari. Yeah, you may commence yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm audible? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're audible.
First of all, I would like to thank the SK and Associates for providing this golden opportunity to share upon this wonderful topic with the young entrepreneurs and the experts from the different fields. Talking about startups, we would just think of that why they are important and how does a business works in the economic growth of a country. In order of economic growth of a country, there must be a healthy business environment, stimulating the entrepreneurial skills and financial investors in a nation for the upliftment and development of a nation. And the performances of the businesses are influenced by multiple factors, which we can recognize as the public institutions regulating the implementations of regulations, registration and the certification of the startups and the businesses, as well as the norms governing the startups and the businesses, as well as the taxes and many more factors which are influencing directly or indirectly to the businesses and startups being run by the young entrepreneurs. We are well aware that every economy has barriers which can discourage the entrepreneurs to start up their business and cope up in the actually existing system which is already taking place in the country all around the world, such as regulation, taxes, and norms. The World Bank has developed the criteria like ranking business index system all around the world using the methodology of ease of doing business. You must be aware of the ease of doing business as it is recently been recently very popular in the country. That how easy doing business in a country is provided by the regulatory system or the government supporting the young entrepreneurs and the businessmen to run their business. And with so many coming startups, it is a must known that what laws govern the respective sector and secure them and create a stable and sustainable business environment for them so that they can grow up and sustain with the upcoming system prevailing in the country. Talking about startups, we are generally supposed to think of that what kind of institutions can run as a startup. Normally, a person can start up an innovative idea, registering a sole proprietorship, either a private limited company with having limited liabilities over the partners and directors, and third one is limited liability partnership, and fourth one is the partnership firm which has 2 or more partners. Later on, we are discussing about the registration as a startup. Registration as a startup is a due diligence process, creating an account and registering the startup business with the different authorities dealing in a particular sector, and documentations required for those are being provided by those sectors which are supposed to be filed and appropriated by the appropriate authority in a way so that there is no legal compliance being violated in accordance with the law of the country. Then the major factor that comes around the hindrance of a startup, as we are talking in the context of the legal norms which are emerging and providing support as well as the hindrance to the startups. So in tax context, there is in India particularly, we are talking about tax exemptions for startups in IT Act, that is Income Tax Act, under Section 80. So under Section 80, there are provisions to be availing the. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
If a business is incorporated as an LLP or a limited liability company, then it can avail the tax benefits under Section 80 of the Income Tax Act. And the total turnover of that company must not exceed 20 crores in any previous year before the 31st March of 2021. And the startup should have been incorporated on after April of 2016. That would mean that sole proprietorship and partnership firms are not eligible for the exemption under this scheme. Second one is the tax exemption under Section 56 of the Income Tax Act, and that is also called to be angel tax. Angel tax was levied on capital raised by the startups from private individuals, which we are discussing with the previous spokespersons. As Professor Purnima elaborated about the angel tax, private individuals and organizations to fund their endeavor. First step is to check yourself as an eligible part of a startup and register yourself in the DPIIT scheme of the Government of India and apply for the tax exemption. And the aggregate amount of its paid up share capital and share premium of a startup after issue of processed issue of share must not exceed 25 crores annual. Later on, we are discussing about the legislations which are to be kept in mind to prevent the securities about your databases or the innovative ideas which you are going to incorporate in your startups. As we are well aware that startups are all around the innovations and new ideas to be promoted through your newly coming business. So as a startup, it's important to protect your ideas and inventions, also to protect the identity which you are trying to create through your brand name or the logo or any other symbol. When starting a startup, IPR issues are in longer run. That would be beneficial in long term for your endeavor to be quick with IPR related issue and also making use of government schemes to ease the burden of functioning as well as funding. If you are keep checking on the IPR issues from the very beginning of your startup, it will help you out long terms, so that your ideas about the concept or the innovation you are putting, they can be protected through patents, trademarks, and geographical indications, as well as the copyrights if you are dealing with the software industry or music industry, anything like that. Further, we are supposed to keep a check on what kind of labor laws are involved in a startup, so that our business and a startup can flourish in a fruitful manner and it would not hinder up with the litigations and strikes and all those things. In order to catalyze the generation of employment opportunities by startups, new schemes have been issued by the government, where self-certification can be made in the field of labor as well as environmental law to ease the startups, so that the startups can easily flourish without indulging into the technical process of due diligence and certifications by the government. Some of the major laws which are being targeted by the government in the regard of a startup can be regarded as the Payment of Gratuity Act 1972, the Contractual Labor Regulations and Abolition Act 1970, the Industrial Disputes Act 1947. This is the most important act, because once you are starting a startup, you must be hiring a team which would be working for the growth of the business, and that in that case your employees and the employer, that is the startup being run by the partners or a private limited company, must have brotherhood or friendlyhood environment, so that there must not be a dispute arising as to the payment of wages or the engagement or removal. So there must be a specific compliance of this Industrial Dispute Act 1947, so that the litigation and other processes which are being covered up by the government authorities must not be availed in between. And for that, we must be focusing on the good skilled experts to regulate the documentations for the contracts and other formalities to be registered as a startup. Later on, the Industrial Employment Standing Order Act 1946. These acts are supposed to frame the internal policies and managements of the startup or a business group, so that the employees and employers are having a friendly talks in between the nature of business. And fifth one is Building and Other Construction Workers Regulation and Employment and Conditions of Services Act 1956, which is basically related to the real estate business, which is fastly growing in the India. Whereas startups cannot be considered in the real estate business in actual, but some of the parts are being concerned as interior designing and other things are concerned. And sixth, but last one, the Interstate Migrant Workmen Regulation of Employment Conditions and Services Act 1971. As the workers from the nation around are working globally, so we must focus on these laws that migrant workers may not face such type of problems or hindrance working in the specific region, so that the startups can run smoothly and no problem of the workmen engagement and strikes and other things or litigations may arise. Emerging challenges of white collar crimes with reference to startups are very important, and we are focusing on this topic in deep today, because once you get a startup being run, there must be a fair chance of
if you could just
sorry.
wind up your speech in, if you could just wind up your speech in 2 minutes, you could have a Q&A session after that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Tiwari, for your insightful speech. The way you elaborated all those sections from the Indian laws, obviously, have given us a deeper insight of the Indian Constitution and multiple aspects of laws within it. We are really, it was quite pleasurable. Please do share your email address in the chat box for any queries that attendees might have. If any of the attendees would like to connect with Mr. Tiwari or to have any questions, please reach out to him through his email address. And now, as we come to the close of this remarkable conference, I would like to take a moment to invite all the attendees for their question and answers. You may address your questions to the respective speaker who want to put the question. Simply unmute yourself and put your questions on. Yeah. Questions here, please. You can simply unmute yourself and begin asking. Questions out here? Ravia Manzoor Bhatt, Imani Bhatia, Hitesh Khatri, Khushi Devani, Maika Gupta, Malika Bajpai, Rashad Kaushik. Okay. You can even text your questions in the chat box if you're quite shy to come on the front lines. Okay, no issues. So we have a question here from Narinder Singh. How to understand various macroeconomic indicators that may impact the startups? Professor Mishra, if I'm audible still, I think that's the question for you.
Hello, I'm audible.
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, so if I refer your question, Narendra, it is saying that how to understand various macroeconomic indicators that may impact the startup. So yes, for starting a business, you should consider your macroeconomic environment, which is the external environment. So if I see macroeconomic, so it includes all the economic indicators. So like employment, GDP, taxation policies, all income, all these things related to startup. So for that, you need to be, being a startup, you need to be updated on that. You may refer, because if you see like RBI policies or the SEBI regulations, they often change. They are not static in nature. So it is advisable for you to be connect with the changing or dynamic environment. So for that, you can refer the changing policies or different reports by institutions like RBI, SEBI, or other things, and somehow even the reports will help you. So for that, of course, you need to be, if you are running a startup, you need to be updated on all these things, and then you need to see how these changes may affect you. So like for example, the interest rate change by RBI. So if you have taken a loan, so it may directly impact your business, right? If there is some changes in the taxation policy by government, and if you're a startup, if it is something related to startup, it may impact you directly. So most of the macroeconomic indicators, they do not impact directly, but yes, indirectly they may have impact. So I hope I address your question.
Yeah, Narendra, I hope your question is. Anyone else? Any questions out here? You must simply unmute yourself and address your question. If you're shy enough, the chat is. But I believe that since we are all law graduates and management professionals pursuing our MBAs and LLBs and LLMs, we should be a bit upfront, at least enough to speak on that. No questions there? Bridget? No? Saheli? Shrishti? Shahiban? Suni? Vivek? Questions out there? Yeah. No questions. Fine. Moving ahead, I would like to take a moment to express our heartfelt appreciation to each and every one of you. The knowledge shared, the insights gained, and the connections made have all contributed to the success of the scene. We are truly grateful for all of your participation. We had the privilege of hearing from a diverse group of speakers who have enlightened us with their expertise. We extend our sincere gratitude for your captivating speeches, fellow guests, for today. Moreover, we would like to acknowledge our incredible attendees too. Your enthusiasm, curiosity, and active engagement has contributed to the dynamic atmosphere of this conference. Now, we would like to invite all the attendees to participate in the voting process. Please take a moment to type the name of your preferred guest speaker for today in the chat box. The top 3 speakers of conference 2.2 will be declared after the end of the third session. Please. One name per person, not more than that, as usual. And disclaimer as usual, it's not a competition, just a strategy to increase engagement and interaction levels amongst attendees. The first, great. We have 31 attendees in the meet. I think we can expect 28 minutes minimum. Faster, everyone. That's still 8 to 9 votes. I think we are missing 21 votes to be precise. That's good. 14, 15, fast. Yeah, the polls will go out in the WhatsApp groups as usual. Now, as we wrap up this conference, we would like to kindly request all attendees and speakers to take a moment to provide their valuable feedback and reviews on Google. Your inputs and thoughts are highly appreciated. Anjali, if you could just share the link in the chat box for the same. Yeah. You can just go there and Google location and you can just type out a feedback on today's session, yesterday's session overall. And if you have any recommendations and any ways you would like to suggest by which we may improve your user experience as an attendee in these conferences, obviously we would really appreciate. After all, criticism, and frank criticism to be precise, is the only thing that helps startups grow, isn't it? Come on. So our inputs and thoughts are highly appreciated as they will help us improve future events and continue delivering high quality conferences to make a community impact. Thank you all for your participation and for being an integral part of this remarkable conference. We look forward to your reviews and your suggestions via our Google location reviews and hope to see you all at the third session of Conference 2.2 tomorrow, where we shall be exploring emerging trends in commercial laws for startups. Same enthusiasm and eagerness to learn and connect. Until then, when we meet again, stay inspired, keep dreaming, and continue to strive for excellence. Thank you and farewell.